Hey Leigh, it's Lisa, and I'm here to give you a quick mini audit of your website, the Social Wellbeing Center. And so I'm going to walk through a few things. The first thing is first impressions. When we arrive on a website, the first thing we're always trying to do is orient ourselves and to get a sense for whether or not we're in the right place. So we're looking for what is this site, what do they offer, and what do they have for me? And so the first big piece of feedback that I have for you is that when I arrived on your website, without having like fresh context for what it is that you do as a therapist, I had a moment of confusion. So looking at, taking in everything very quickly, I had this sense, it gave me a YMCA kind of vibe. Oh, this is an actual center where men come together and do social activities. And then of course, it didn't take long for me to get down here and see, oh yes, okay, right. Leigh is a therapist. She offers counseling for these men. But the confusion had already happened. And so first thing, get more clear that this is a therapy website, that you are a therapist offering therapy sessions. And so the three kind of contributing factors here are this main photo, the name of the business itself, the fact that it ends with center, and then jumpstart your social life, kind of pairing with all of that just really gave me the wrong message. And then getting down, it gets clearer sooner, but you could lose people before that. So that's number one. Kind of along with that, I feel as though I want to see you. I want to see you here sooner. Maybe your name. I tried Googling you to kind of see if I could get to this site that way, and I wasn't able to do that. I wasn't able to really find you at all. And so having more of you so that you're searchable, because people will really refer you and not the Social Wellbeing Center. So having your name up here up front, having your photo up front here, that could really help to bring more of you and help them really understand that they are in the right place, that this is the opportunity to work with you as a therapist. That's that point. The next one is the substantial branding method and the balance of meaning, value, and originality. So we want our brand messaging to have a good, strong balance between meaning, value message that tells people what we stand for, our vision, what we care about, and pulls them into a bit of an emotional connection with us. Value messaging, which tells them what we can do for them. Here's the transformation we can provide. Here's our promise. And then the originality-based messaging, which tells them our unique point of view on things, how we do things differently, and that's the stuff that sets us apart. So your website right now is very value heavy. Everywhere I look, I'm seeing another promise of a result, a promise of a result, a promise of a result. And that's great because you're nice and clear on what you can help them achieve. But anything that gets, anything that's just promise, promise, promise can start to feel really empty. And so that's why to bring substance in, we want to have more balance between these different elements. And so, my recommendation for that is really that you amp up the originality piece. So meaning you have some throughout the site, you have your backstory, et cetera, et cetera. And I think you could bring in a little bit more meaning. But what I feel is really lacking is the originality, your point of view, and telling them how you can get them there. So depending on your demographic, and you're targeting specifically men over 50, that's just the demographic. But if you're targeting, men who are very intelligent, men who, are maybe well educated, maybe they're very discerning, maybe they're a little skeptical, then these men are going to want to see more than a promise. They're going to want to see how you help them achieve that thing. And that's where originality can come in, because you can start to tell them your point of view on why they haven't achieved what they're trying to achieve yet. So an example that I wanted to share with you is, this page on mending relationships, and how you have somewhere here, while time in and of itself does not necessarily heal, actions do. That's originality. That is a statement from your point of view on maybe something that has been missing in their approach to this. Maybe they think that it's just going to happen, or that time heals all. And you're coming out and you're saying time doesn't heal, actions do. That is a bold statement. And that's an example of something that you could bring more to the forefront, so that they're not just seeing promise, but it's like, here's something to chew on. Here's something to think about. You want to get them thinking. You want them to be like, oh yeah, I hadn't seen it that way. So bringing in more perspective like that is how you add that depth, and you break up all of the marketing messaging so that they don't just feel sold to. They actually feel like you're having a bit of a conversation with them. The other piece that you can really bring in to round out that originality is your approach. So you have that on your homepage. You talk about this, it's down here. Where did I see it? Solution. Where is it? One second. Okay. See, here it was on your About Me page. So I wouldn't think to go to the About You page to learn how you're going to help me get what I want. So you want to take what you're sharing here about this goal-directed approach that focuses on solutions instead of problems. And you want to be using that on the pages where you're actually talking about how you serve them, and then telling them more about why that approach will work for them. I think that could be seen as something that's really attractive and enticing for your ideal client, because they maybe don't want to be digging up the past. So you could even say, we're not going to have to dig up the past for you to have what you want in your future. This approach is all about, setting the right goals and blah, blah, blah. So that kind of messaging there would also really round out all of the promises that you have across the site. And then in terms of meaning, you have this beautiful story on your About Me page. I would just shorten that to About, because one of the issues that you kind of brought up that you want to be addressing is that you don't want to be drawing too much attention to the difference in demographic between you and who you serve. And so why don't you make this page about, and it's really about the work, and it's about you, but it's also about them, and it's about the work you do with them and the vision you have for them. It's not really about you. It's about the relationship that you're offering them to enter into with you. So that's just a quick little note, but I love this story. And again, I think this story actually helps with that concern of the difference in demographics. So you being a younger female, supporting men above 50 through counseling, this story explains why you've chosen them. And I think that you could go further and just face it head on. I recognize there's quite a demographic difference between you and me. Here's why I've chosen to dedicate my work to supporting men above 50 moved from loneliness to a well-connected life. So just name it, put it right in their face. I know this is weird. I know this might seem weird. So it's an objection that you think that they might have, and you're just going to name it face on. I've chosen to work with men because of this story. And even here's another opportunity to get more into your perspective. What is different about supporting men in this world than supporting women? Name some of that. Men are actually overlooked when it comes to social well-being or something like that. Statements about what you've seen, what you've observed, and why it's important to you that you are serving this demographic. Face it head on. And so kind of going back to meaning, value, originality, bringing a lot more originality. Your story is amazing. You can go a little further into, how will the world be different when men have, gotten in touch with themselves and found that social well-being, that they've strengthened their relationships, etc. And so you've kind of chosen this lane of relationships and social well-being for men above 50. Ask yourself, the bigger vision for that. So when men have stronger relationships, social well-being, how is the whole world going to be better? And that's something that you could bring in here a little bit as well, to just bring in some of that additional meaning. And if it doesn't end up on your site, because the thing is, our brand is this, our website is this, right? So not all of this might end up on your website, but it's something to have that you might be sharing even in conversation with potential clients. Like, here's what I believe. I believe that men are key to us having a future where everybody feels free, like that it's safe to connect or whatever. So that's an example of taking that bigger vision and sharing it. The other thing about the how is that I saw somewhere that you talked about developing skills. I think that would be very valuable for you to bring even more into the forefront again, because that feels very tangible. And again, you have to stereotype a little bit when you're kind of developing an ideal client avatar. And so if your ideal client are these men and they happen to be really intelligent, maybe a little bit more, rational versus emotional, depending on who they are, then the idea that they're developing a skill would feel really tangible to them and appeal to them. And that brings me to my next point, which is your concern. Are you using the right language for these men? It completely depends on, got your demographic down for who you want to serve, but what is the psychographic or the behavioral kind of patterns of your very ideal client? If your ideal client is very aware, maybe they've done a lot of work on themselves, and relationships is just that missing piece, then I think that you're hitting the fine notes with your languaging. But I do think that you're asking them to be quite aware and quite evolved in their own personal development in order to resonate with some of the languaging you've used. So what I recommend is, first of all, getting clear on psychographically what kind of men you want to work with. And if they're actually men who are a little bit more stunted and have struggled and not really done that personal development work yet, then you might need to meet them where they're at, more with more concrete language. And the best way to get that language is actually to interview them. So first of all, listen, when you are connecting with brand new clients, listen to the language they use, but also go out there and say, hey, can you describe what you were looking for? Can you describe the challenges you were encountering? Get their language, build up that vocabulary, and then reflect it right back to them. Clarity over cleverness or style always. You could take the language they're using and replace some of the more elaborate language you're using and resonate with them a lot more easily. And you also mentioned about SEO, and the truth is SEO has the exact same interest in mind, because they're going to search using their language. And so if you're getting their language and you're putting it on your website, it's going to resonate with them, and it's also going to help with SEO. I've already talked about putting it right out there that you recognize that there's an interesting demographic difference here, and saying why it is, etc. But the other thing that I would do is if you can do this, because I know that there are some restrictions with therapy, being a therapist, but if you can put their words on your site, anonymously, whatever, so that you can have other people, these men, kind of break through those objections or fears for you. Like, I was concerned that Leigh wouldn't understand what it's like, but I was wrong. Like, that kind of, like, have their words do some of that heavy lifting for you if you can. And also there's just, there's trust that comes immediately by hearing from other people's perspectives what it was like to work with you. The other thing, if you can, that I would consider is actually having photos of you with them. I think it would really bridge this divide. There's a bit of a divide, like even in the site, where the men are in some photos and you're in others. It makes it feel kind of mysterious. Like, what does it look like when you sit down and you have that conversation? I know that you do it virtually, but I think that seeing you in your element, in your in your therapy element, actually connecting with a man would help those men see that they could connect with you too. And so that's just another thought on how you can kind of address that. And I do want to say, like, I love your niche. I think you've done an incredible job of specificity of who you serve, but also of this bigger kind of lane of relationships and social well-being for men. And you've also broken it down really well into these specific areas like romantic life, social circle, family relationships. I don't know if Build a Joyful Future really needs to be there. That actually feels like you're going broad again. But when I go into it, I see this issue of the midlife crisis. That might be what that's really about. That's a lot more tangible. The one last thing that I wanted to share with you is this idea of action clarity. Is it clear to your potential client what to do next? And are you kind of walking them through that process cleanly? And so obviously if somebody's interested, they're going to go join the wait list, and that brings them to the same place as this Get Started button. This page is really important. Somebody just took a vulnerable move of saying, yes, maybe I want this help. And so I think that there's a lot of room for improvement on this page, because it feels like, for example, insurance and fees, cancellations is being given the exact same priority as what it actually looks like to get started with you. And so my recommendation would be to take what it looks like to get started with you, bring that to the forefront. You know, we'll have a conversation before we commit to anything. We want to make sure that it's a good fit. We'll spend our very first session, getting really clear on what our goals are for working together, whatever. You let them know what to expect when they reach out. So they're going to reach out, really kind of paint a picture of how safe this will feel, of how rewarding, practical, however it feels. Paint that picture and put that in the forefront, and then put these more FAQ style things at a bit slight less of priority, because I know that they're important and that they are questions that they have. So definitely you can keep it on the page. But what they really want to know when they come to this page is what's going to happen after I submit this request. And the form is a little bit buried here as well. So I would, have your Get Started, put your link to the form up higher, and then put that additional context right underneath that link. And so then they fill out the form. They already know what to expect once they fill that out. Again, it'd be nice to have a photo of you here. You're the one that they're reaching out to connect with, and even better to have a photo of you with somebody in that ideal clientele range. So those are my 5 things for you. So 1, when we arrive, we need to orient ourselves. It needs to be super clear what this business is about and whether or not it's a fit for us. So clean up that confusion, make it super clear that this is about therapy for men and that you are a therapist. So having you in the forefront. The second one is rejigging that balance between meaning, value, and originality. So you've got all value here. Promise, 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 promise. Pull out some of that context of, how you do it, why you do it, and bring some of that more into the forefront so that it adds that substance, and it doesn't feel as much like, well, this all sounds like great promises, but it's not really landing and I don't see how it'll work for me. You want to kind of illustrate how it'll work for them. The next one is making sure that you're clear on what language is going to resonate by knowing the psychographic of the man that you want to serve. Are they somebody who's more evolved, or do you need to kind of get more of their language to make sure you're meeting them where they're at and using language of how they would describe their situation? So go out and listen, get that language from them and reflect it back. The next one is meeting that difference of your demographic and their demographic head on. So adding to your about page, saying why it is you chose them, but also acknowledging it. So it doesn't seem like you're hoping they won't notice or something like that. So just name it head on. And with that, bringing in more of their language and photos of you together, bridging this gap between you and these men as much as possible on the actual website. And then the last thing is warming up this Get Started page by telling them more about what it will look like when you actually connect, and then bringing kind of these more logistical housekeeping type things into more of an FAQ at the bottom, but really making sure they feel welcome when they land on this page, because they are in a vulnerable place. They want to know what's going to happen. So paint that picture for them of what's going to happen when they reach out to you. So that's what I have for you. Please reach out if you have any questions. And thank you so much for allowing us to do this review of your brand. Okay, take care.